And we're back. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Presidential Library. So, Arnie was the 38th governor of California from 2003 to 2011.
Bless him.
He was good.
Yeah, no, there was another joke in Expendables where they say about him being president, isn't there? In the, in the church scene where Bruce Willis is there as well. And he's like, "What's that fucking guy's problem?" And Stallone's like, "He wants to be president."
Sly and Arnie have been doing it for years, taking the
I think they've always been friends.
Yeah, and it's good when you actually you see it.
One of the first times you just got to see them together, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they talk about the franchise wars with Taco Bell's as well. It's such a random restaurant.
Must be the ones that actually he paid for the right to. And he's like, every restaurant every restaurant they lost out to Taco Bell.
Yeah.
So everything had to assimilate.
Something you imagine like McDonald's doing now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or in Britain there's a pub chain called Wetherspoons, isn't there? And there's pretty much no little pubs left anymore, is there? They've all been franchised, and because they sell cheap drinks, don't they? And, all that stuff's happening now. It's so weird.
With Subway's a big one.
Yeah.
For doing it.
Which is also a lethal weapon fund,
Yeah. And I think realistically, if it was going to be someone who's going to win the franchise wars, it would be McDonald's.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But that would be. I'd want it to be Pizza Hut, to be honest.
I've had Pizza Hut for a long time, actually. But yeah, that would be cool. I've never even had a Taco Bell. I know there's only a couple.
Yeah.
But I think there's one in Manchester. There's not many here because it's the American thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Same with Burger King. I can't stand Burger King, but I think it's bigger in America, isn't it, than it is here.
I remember there was one near here, but it got turned into a KFC.
Yeah, there's one in our town centre. Opposite Wilkinson's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the last time I went there, they didn't have veggie burgers. So fuck you.
Well, they probably would have in Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have can you?
Yeah, so there'd all be veggie burgers.
Oh, do you know what I do love as well? You know the scene where he's having dinner and that woman's like, "What would you say if I called you like a brute barbarian or something like that?" And he goes, "Thanks."
And the guy's singing the Jolly Green Giants.
Yeah.
Taco Bell though as a fancy restaurant.
It's just it's so random, isn't it? I mean, they're hardly healthy, are they?
No. Which does link us on to Edgar Friendly.
Yeah.
Who you find out is not the villain because he's only there to steal food.
Yeah.
And do what he does to survive. But why do they look like they've come from Mad Max?
I don't know. Yeah, that was the science fiction poor people of the future look, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Back then.
They do it as well in '93's RoboCop 3.
Yeah, it's with the long coats and the dirty faces. And stuff.
The splatterpunks.
Yeah.
They all.
It's strange, isn't it?
Everybody just looks like they come out of the Road Warrior.
I think the Mad Max has a lot to answer for, doesn't it? For that whole future barbarian thing.
Definitely, and
I quite like him as a character. Actually, I don't like Dennis Leary, but I do like him in that. Because he's probably the right person for that part because he's quite venomous, isn't he, in his normal comedy? So I think that works. The scene where Stallone has a rat burger. It's a rat burger.
Yeah,
not bad. I like that sort of. I like the idea that he's more at home with the underground rebel people than he is with the authorities.
Because that's his kind of people.
Yeah, and you realise there's not actually anything wrong with them. They're just one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, isn't it?
That's
your favourite Bond film.
Yeah. Living Daylights.
Dino Day.
Oh, Dino Day. I was thinking of the scene from in Afghanistan in Living Daylights.
Oh no, yeah, right, yeah. Well, that does have a link to Stallone because Rambo 3.
The film was dedicated to on original release.
Whoopsie.
Oh, I got that one completely wrong. a little line from her, after all this has happened, when Sly finds out, Storm Spartan finds out that the scraps are not the bad guys.
Yeah.
And the big fight, and Huxley goes, "You're better live than on Laserdisc."
God, yeah.
We barely have Blu-rays and DVDs now because
Doesn't
it's
that
all
just
digital.
date things?
Yeah.
I mean, Laserdisc was, in case there's any people under 40 on this listening to this podcast, Laserdisc were basically like, they were sort of proto DVDs, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think they were supposed to be like the next big thing, but that's you would maybe remember more than me. Were they too expensive, or
they weren't really a big thing in this country? You had to travel all the way through to Leicester to one shop, and it was not that much of a selection. It was basically like 12-inch vinyl.
They were huge, weren't they?
Yeah, and they were analog.
They're ironically quite collector-y now as well.
Yeah.
They go for hundreds of pounds, but I mean, I think they damage easily as well compared to DVDs and stuff, don't they? But I mean, From what I heard, I think a Laserdisc player was like $700. So people didn't really have that sort of money kicking around in the early 90s, did they?
So you had to flip them from right.
Yeah, you do, yeah. So, or even in the 80s. But I think they were the first sort of optical media to have things like director's commentaries and makings and stuff like that. Which is like we take for granted now, don't we?
You think about it, he's given all the information on a disc.
Yeah.
Yet today, you just like just email me it.
Yeah, it's on your phone, isn't it? Or,
yeah. Or you'd be given a USB stick
or a smartwatch.
Yeah, I mean it's like with security, you don't have video cameras. You if you want to share your security cameras, all you do is you just say, email me it, and I'll watch it.
File, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or you even wear body cams now, don't you?
Yeah.
Police wear them and stuff. I mean, I quite enjoy watching science fiction films from the late 80s and 90s where they think CDs were like the be all and end all technology, weren't they?
The thing is, when it comes to music, other than of course digital, we are looking at everyone's going back to vinyl. So going back to the past, which is I'm expecting VHS to come back.
It's a nostalgia thing again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do you know, in about 10 years, I think that's going to happen. I think they're going to bring that back momentarily for collectors. And
I want a video recorder. That's the one thing I do want. I want a video recorder.
I haven't got a video recorder anymore.
Me neither, and I'm regretting.
I'd love to watch something on VHS now. I know, like, we're so spoiled with 4K and HD now, aren't we? But it's just like the thrill of, fast forwarding past the trailers you'd seen 1,000 times before the film, and oh shit, I forgot to rewind that.
I think with cassettes coming back, I think that they will start doing VHS again soon, just for the collectors.
There's been HMV did a thing recently where some of their films were released on VHS covers.
Yeah.
And it was like the big thick boxes and that. I thought that was quite cool, but I don't think anyone's done any proper tapes, have they, for a while?
No.
Not even like for a collector's edition or something like that.
That's what we need. We need which I think coming soon to the High Ground podcast, we should be doing the theatrical cuts of a certain galaxy far, far away.
We should.
That would be an interesting one.
I can't actually remember a lot of what happens in them. That's quite sad now, isn't it?
So,
We've been
that's
on our theme of burying the past.
Yeah. Yeah. We get to watch Jelly with Lapty Neck. And the other song. Oh, I got one for you. Virtual Sex.
Yeah, I was just going to go on to that. It led straight on from the
Virgin fanboys still not getting any in the virtual world. I actually wrote that on my notes.
It's just, I think the hilarious bit is when he's like getting ready to do it, and she's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, what does he say again?
The hunker chunker.
Yeah,
I was good at it.
She's like, physical contact? That's
exchange of bodily fluids.
Yeah, exchange of bodily fluids. I mean, because are we still not far off AIDS here? Or
AIDS was gone. AIDS was in '93. It was big. It was big in the news, but it was not COVID big.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that.
Yeah, it was like the first COVID, I suppose, wasn't it?
It was one that got everybody scared. I mean, not that I'm comparing. Not that we're comparing.
No, but it was still a pandemic, isn't it?
Yeah, because nobody, when AIDS was announced, nobody knew exactly
what it was,
and it was all rumors about how you get it. I mean, if you listen to Delirious,
yeah,
Eddie Murphy, What they thought they could get it. That was 83. So it's
only 10 years though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's those funny predictions, isn't it? Where they, they think things like sex will be gone in the future.
Yeah.
Like,
But a lot of I know we rag on the people that they would rather pay out for virtual sex than pay out to find themselves someone. When I say pay out, I don't mean get a prostitute. I mean go and do the groundwork to actually
if that's your thing, though.
Yeah, to do physically talk to someone.
Yeah.
And being in the same room as someone.
Thing, isn't it?
Phone sex.
Yeah, phone sex is like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's weird watching like these predictions of what happens, and they're not that far off, are they?
No.
In principle. I mean, like how it looks is obviously, we don't sit in a room like cross-legged with the big goggles on going, ooh.
But I mean, I'm not a gamer, so I'm going to ask you, like in Ready Player One when you have the bodysuits, you can get those, can't you, now?
I don't think you can get like the headset. I mean, VR is sort of, that's another thing of the 80s that's sort of making a comeback. They were big into like VR's the next big thing, and it never really took off. And now it's like, well, you can get VR porn. I mean, wouldn't you just go and have sex for real? Like, it's just, but I mean, yeah, it's just, how these predictions, some of the predictions are spot on, aren't they, in science fiction, and it's quite scary that they get these trends absolutely correct.
Why would you need to find a partner when you can have a virtual one?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a scene, isn't there? It's probably the only scene where I think that was added for some gratuitous boobs, where Stallone's switching through the channels and that woman is in the shower, isn't she? And he's just kind of like, what? While he's knitting.
But we do have video. We do have all that tech.
Yeah.
So you can literally, if you got a wrong call and you just click on it by mistake,
more than possible, isn't it?
I mean, plus, whereas rather than using a phone line, you can literally video call for free over the internet if you've got a connection.
I'd love to show all these, the people who create these films and TV shows back then. Like, we actually have like technology where you could talk to someone on screen now.
Well,
yeah.
I said you can watch these films anytime you want, anywhere you want. That's the future. You're like, wow.
Seeing your little confused face, like, what?
I thought the time when Demolition Man came out in '93 and literally gave myself my own the film collection today, which would be the first film I'd probably watch.
Yeah.
I think that's a question for another podcast.
Once you got over your initial, like, what you mean, these films aren't actually, like, they don't have a hard copy.
Yeah. So they're all stored on here. I think I know which one I'd probably go for first.
Okay.
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace.
Because you think about it, like, if you go back to that period, it'd be like in '93. You'd be like, you got any Star Wars film on it? So you would have to start with Phantom Menace.
I think you'd be even more surprised that there's 7, 8, and 9 as well.
George Lucas finally made them. No, he sold it to Disney.
Star Wars on TV? What?
Yeah. Disney owns everything now.
Then you'd be like, yeah, well, I knew that.
Come on. Yeah, considering Disney was just, they had Star Tours and Disney since I think '87. It's kind of not much of a stretch that the Disney.
I know, yeah. I mean, the 90s was kind of like their peak period, wasn't it? Lion King, Aladdin. That was all their big, massive successes, wasn't it? And Beauty and the Beast. And so, yeah, I think now you'd sort of be like, well, yeah, of course Disney owns everything. Or, it would be even funnier going back to 1993 and going, superhero films are massive now. Yeah. We've discussed this as well, haven't we? Before?
You realise by the time if you go back to '93 and you said about it, you didn't hit '97 and go, that guy fucking. He said he was maybe. He fucking lied.
Yeah.
He lied. Robert just killed everything.
It's doomed. Do you know what I'd love to see in the world of Demolition Man? I'd love to see what films are like.
Yeah.
Like where is cinema still there, or is it bands as well?
I think it's probably the same as it is today, where it's all three essentially safe movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's happened now as well, isn't it? I mean, the franchise wars could refer to films now, couldn't they?
Easily.
That's all we deal in now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, early 90s, you could still probably find films that were like Demolition Man where there was no sequel, and, like, films that you'd love to see a sequel to now that don't have them.
I remember when you brought around Nightbreed.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I was like, I haven't seen this in years. And I saw that at the cinema. They wouldn't get a cinema release
No way.
today.
Be on Netflix, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like it's because it's not.
I think Demolition might even get stuck on Netflix, might it?
As soon as they realised that it's because they had problems in production, didn't it?
Yeah, I think there was a few. Yeah.
So they'd be like, yeah, we'll just do what we did with Annihilation because we don't like the cut that they've given
Just
it.
shove it on there.
Shove it on Netflix.
Yeah.
They're not going to give it a theatrical release. Annihilation is a great film. If you haven't seen it, go watch it on Netflix or however you choose to watch it.
As you can tell from Steve's tone of voice there, he's not best impressed.
Not
about
best impressed. I think
decision.
Garland is a genius and that should have been given a theatrical
I
release.
found out yesterday he's got the same birthday as me.
Oh, it's Garland?
Yeah.
Solid. I think I've got the same as, I think it's might be Richard Pryor.
Oh, right. Oh, that's good.
I think.
Oh, ironically, my missus has got the same as Sandra Bullock.
Nice.
Talking about this podcast.
So you say after you said happy birthday to the boss, you also say happy birthday
Yeah.
to Sandra Bullock.
Indeed. Yeah.
Celebrate them both on the same day.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
You'd be in trouble for that.
I had quite a few good ones for mine, actually. I've got Peter Cushing.
Nice.
Helena Bonham Carter. John Wayne.
Helen Bonham Carter and not John Wayne.
Yeah.
Helen Bonham Carter and Peter Cushing.
Yeah, Peter Cushing.
I was watching him. I was actually watching him on the 25th.
Peter Cushing.
Yeah. In fact, he went on a moment of triumph.
I think you overestimate their chances.
So that turned 44. That's our one Star Wars reference. We've done a few Star Wars references.
We have,
in this podcast.
But the other
That's
ones
another
were
one.
academic.
Yes.
They were part of the subject.
Okay, the ending. So the safety film on cars. I can't believe we nearly missed that one.
Yeah.
That's,
I think that's quite a good idea, actually.
Yeah. Because we do have the bags.
Yeah, airbags.
So that's a natural continuation from that. Oh, and a line which I think sums up the film. This is Edgar Friendly. According to Cocteau's plan, I'm the enemy because I like to think. Which goes back to the whole reason why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
The enemies thinks outside the box and thinks for themselves rather than being dictated to what to think.
Well, it's 1984 again, isn't it? With the newspeak and the double think.
Yeah.
And words not meaning what they used to mean, you know, like all the ministries are named after the opposite of what they do, aren't they? Like the Ministry of Love is torture, and Ministry of Truth is where Winston Smith works, isn't it? Where he covers up history, and I don't know how Orwell's seen all this coming, but it's all came true.
Yeah.
Every single part of that book is, apart from the fascist party thing, which I actually wouldn't discount as well, seeing what happened in America in the last 4 years. It's crazy how much, like, the guy's a genius, isn't he?
Yes.
And like I think all sort of science fiction, because it is science fiction. It annoys me when people say 1984 is this great book, so therefore it's not science fiction because it's great.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm sorry, but piss off. Like that, I hate that sort of elitism you get in literature where they say just because something's good, it's not part of what you would call a trashy genre. You know, all science fiction owes a debt to 1984, including this.
Yeah. But I think with science fiction, see what science fiction is, and anything, you know, comic books, when you look at the Light of the Watchmen, for example, is that if you suddenly compare society to, say, things like this, it's easier to, and if you to be really vocal and get out there and say, we are becoming like a science fiction movie or a science fiction book, it's easier to discredit people because people don't see it as being intellectual.
No, it's kind of like I always think of science fiction as a bit like a club, isn't it? And if you're not initiated and you don't know the language, and it's kind of like they do get considered as being nuts, don't they? And conspiracy theorists. And
but I was having a debate the other day, and I said, like, I am the easiest person to discredit.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is look at the books I've read, or look at the films I watch, everything that I consume, and you can discredit me so easily by just writing it off as being, oh, he watches this, he does this, what does he know? It's science fiction, it's fiction.
You know, and I actually think it's the best. It's the most sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Prescient, I suppose, where you're like, where predictions are made, but it's not the prediction that's the main thing. You know, it's. I think it's the form of like culture. What's the word I'm looking for? The subgenre that's the most clairvoyant You know, to things like it's had predictions that have always came true. You know, some, like you say, like the most dated science fiction is stuff that either dates the year or, you know, makes predictions that are so out there that you're kind of like, oh, whatever, you know, like we don't have light speed in 1999, you know, that sort of stuff. But
Back to the Future Part 2, where they deliberately threw as much junk in there as possible just for a laugh.
But you know that's sort of that's there because science fiction fans have that language, that meta language, don't they, where they understand that that's a joke. Like we haven't ever going to get jetpacks or hoverboards. You know, I think that's funny.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh well, that's wrong. You know, the ones that can say like, oh yeah, Back to the Future, that's wrong. That never happened in 2015. You don't get it. Like that's the sort of person who doesn't understand that humor. Whereas, you know, something like Blade Runner, like that hasn't came true either. You know, there's no flying cars, but you can quite easily believe that's a real world. But
the replicants are slaves.
Yeah,
rebelling slaves.
And we all have something. There's a robotic thing in your corner that does whatever you want when you sell it.
Yeah, you can ask it as many questions as you want. We're not going to say its name because
it'll activate.
It will activate,
and some believe will watch us.
Yeah,
but no, I mean like that. I think science fiction has the most scope for dealing with all the stuff that humans deal with. You know, that's why things like Star Trek are so influential. You know, like maybe even more so culturally than Star Wars, because, you know, like you say, you would like a utopian Roddenberry future.
Oh, the one thing I think Star Wars got right with George Lucas, I mean, is Return of the Jedi, which was history with Vietnam.
Yeah.
But is the one that really, I mean, as far as defined as being as for George Lucas directed. I like Attack of the Clones, but I'm not going to include it because it's just a puff piece. But I think Phantom Menace, after THX, American Graffiti, and A New Hope, I think Phantom Menace is George Lucas's fourth masterpiece because he predicted the life of Trump. Because he saw history repeating itself, and the audience, which was Phantom Menace, I don't care what anyone says, Phantom Menace was aimed at children.
Yeah.
Like the original Star Wars trilogy was. It was aimed at children.
Yeah.
And educating. So I mean, it's like when I was watching A New Hope the other day, or Star Wars, if you prefer, if you're the original Jedi.
Yeah, if you were there.
There is a lot of politics in Star Wars, but there's a lot of other stuff in with it that it was kind of hidden. Yeah,
well, I mean, they talk about like dissolving the Senate and that, but you were really like, that's the first time you see that, you're kind of like, what is this? Like, I'm so interested in this world. And
we're interested in Vader choking the guy out. Yeah, and that scene is like boring, talking.
Buns.
Yeah,
so to speak.
And then when you get, you're like, wow, just wow, but
yeah, no, but we said this on the commentary, didn't we?
Yeah.
Phantom Menace is kind of like, I think the reason you can seem like you know the future. Like, no science fiction writer knows the future. Like, they will be the first to admit the worst kind of science fiction writers are scientists.
Yeah.
When you bombard it with stuff that is real, you kind of like, well, I don't know what the fuck's going on here unless I know physics. Whereas the best of writers don't know anything about science, but they know the implications of what that science can bring, and particularly what individuals can do. You know, like, and the reason that Palpatine is, you know, Palpatine's like a stereotype, isn't he? Kind of bad guy, but he exists because there are people like that. There have been people like that.
Science fiction writers know culture.
Yeah.
They know how things, they know history.
Yeah. Well, like this, I mean, how much in Demolition Man is here? Like, no physical contact with people, and, you know, getting confused which pronoun to use.
Oh yes, that's one. Because if you use the wrong one, and this is...
you're up shit creek without a paddle. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what I like to call it the fascism of democracy, where you can't ironically use free speech because it's too free. You can't say what you want to say or you can't say something that you would say normally because you're too afraid it might offend. And, you know, all you should be able to say is what word would you like me to use, rather than sort of stumbling around looking for the word that you need to use.
I mean, there's been a few. There's a bit. I mean, I'm just going to use the one that's the least offensive. When I say least offensive, I mean the one that's the safest. It's just the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, which we contemplated. You know, because doing a podcast at one point, but you can't touch it because if someone hears it and doesn't like what we're saying, we could be reported or blocked or anything like that. So everything we've done so far will be. So that is a controlling
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
environment, and there is.
When you say something like, "Oh, I try to stay away from politics in conversation," I do try and do that with people I don't know, especially. But you think, well, why should I have to? Because unless you're a raging like nationalist and you don't believe like foreigners should live here and stuff like that. Like I'm not talking about that sort of that far along that political spectrum, but like you shouldn't be afraid to say like your views. As long as you feel you're not being offensive, you're being like. I don't know how many friends I've fallen out with on Facebook because of political decisions. Like oh I voted for this person. Who did you vote for? Oh, I'm not friends with you anymore. I don't believe in that. Well, what? How small-minded is that?
People like to be, they're right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's no, but there are people that just don't like discussion, or
no.
It's
like Demolition Man.
Yeah.
So it's all coming true.
It is, and it's kind of like the ending, where I guess you've got to say you do need, with the ending of the old way with the scraps, and you got the police joining the scraps, and they're the ones that build the new future, and it's the Demolition Man that's going to make it kind of like light, kind of like the gritty bit with the good bits, and it all intermixes, which you do need. Like you're going back to say about differing of opinions.
Yeah, you need the rough with the smooth, don't you? And I also like the ending because you rejoin that sort of. It starts with the chaos of like 97 LA, doesn't it? And it ends with the chaos of like a prison environment. And I never noticed till I rewatched it for this podcast. I've never noticed this before, and you probably have. At the beginning, when he says, "I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached," I'll keep it in mind. I never ever even thought of that as like a pay attention to that, kids, because that's going to happen at the end, and that's a really good sort of foreshadowing. And I can't believe I've never picked that up.
Oh, it's brilliant,
and it's so good. I love discovering that with older films. He gets his head booted off. In case you haven't seen it, but we did say spoilers at the start.
We did, so we've. But you're right, and it's been fantastic, and I like to think we've got a little bit of politics, so to speak, and how we feel in the future. I mean, I do think that somewhere down the line, and I never thought I'd ever say this, but we are going to look at the Matrix.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Well, because continuing on with this, because I think that'd be a fascinating one, and I'm not a fan of the Matrix films.
I think that'd make it more interesting.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny how the way that we look at the world is today, that I'm looking at things that I may not necessarily be a fan of, but just see if there's a kind of truth in it.
Well, you never know. I might root for you, and you might like it.
Oh no! I'm not going. I'll tell you one thing that did blow my mind as well, on a similar theme to Demolition Man, is on this podcast, not in terms of the film, but it was THX 1138. I watched that, and that's got the similar. So that's defined as high art compared to Demolition Man.
Yeah, but I mean, why is that high art? And it's the same director, but the Phantom Menace it's just. Because it's the same things, isn't it? Like it's the rise of a society that's going to be more restrictive than the last, and clones as well. Like I mean, everyone looks the same. They're not cloned, are they? But they're created, aren't they? Yeah. And I've got to think that maybe that's a Clone Wars sort of, I don't know, gestation thing for him. Maybe
simulation. Everyone's going to be looking like this.
Yeah, like the Borg.
Yeah. Except for actually, I can't say anything. I like the card, so I'm not saying anything. And First Contact, so I can't believe it. I am not a Trekkie or a Trekker.
The wording. Like I meant to ask what the actual difference between that is.
A Trekkie and a Trekker.
Is it just the same thing, but they prefer?
Some people prefer Trekkie, some people prefer Trekker. I think Trekkie.
Trekker makes you sound like you walk a lot, though, doesn't it? Like you're a professional hiker.
Yeah. I like it a bit in Fanboys. We actually Trekker. Trekkie is derogatory.
If you ever get the chance to watch Fanboys, like do so. It's hilarious, isn't it?
Brilliant film.
Just to hear Seth Rogen dressed up as a Klingon saying, "Captain Picard's not gay, he's British."
Oh, he's brilliant. That is Look at where some of the actors are.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even notice that Dan Fogler
Dan
was in
Fogler.
Fantastic
Yeah, I
Beasts,
didn't.
wasn't
You were the one who pointed it
Oh, was
out
it
to
me?
me.
Was it? Oh,
You
right.
pointed it
I
out
thought
to
you
me. I
put
was like, no way. And I was like, shit, he's right. Or Kristen Bell,
Yeah,
who actually went on to be who dresses as spoilers. She dresses up as a sort of Disney princess at the end.
Yeah.
And then she
Who
ends up.
doesn't?
Yeah. Then she does does become a real Disney princess.
That Disney princess is actually in that as well, isn't she? Princess Leia is actually in that, isn't she?
She
I'm
is.
not call it. Yeah, I mean Carrie
Oh,
Fisher.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, Carrie. Yeah, but I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think it's one of those ones where you can sort of. I never thought, like Demolition Man, you could do a philosophy lesson out of it, but some of these films do turn out to be more, I suppose, I don't know, like telling of the times. And we keep sort of blowing off science fiction here, but it is one of the best storytelling tools to sort of tell you about how you're living right now, isn't it? Or how things might be in 5 years. I think a lot of people when you say describe science fiction, and I did this when I was studying at university, I did a sort of survey just to see what people thought, and most people were always like, oh yeah, it's all set in space and it's in the future. Like, all right, some of it is, yeah, but it's more about that stuff's all about what you're doing right now, isn't it? And even like Doctor Who, like even that sort of encounters things that we deal with here and now.
Doctor Who, when it's done right, is there's entertainment in it. There are episodes of education tools.
Yeah, and Star Trek is more science fiction than Star Wars, and I do think it's like the best storytelling tool for learning from.
Definitely.
And like this has just proved it. Like, I mean, you'd never have thought an action film in 1993 with Stallone in it, no less, would be a teaching tool, but it is. Yeah.
So this has been the High Ground Podcast and Demolition Man. I'm Stevie W.
And Callum. Be well.